Greetings Indie Warriors and welcome to I Dream of Indie. I'm Old Gamer Joe bringing you another review today as we look at first-person shooter NERF Legends on the Steam PC platform. The first NERF blaster came out back in 1989, making me about 5 years old, and I remember those guns well. You were like the coolest kid in school if you had a NERF blaster and a Ghostbusters backpack. I can remember playing with that as well. Incredibly though, NERF guns appear just as, if not more popular today than they were back then. I was more of a cap gun kid myself, as my family couldn't always afford the fancy new NERF guns, and when it comes to video games, this isn't the first NERF game either. If you've ever been to an arcade, perhaps you've seen some of the Raw Thrills offerings. Well, they have a NERF arcade game that's actually a lot of fun. You have a few original Wii games here, including the now discontinued NERF and Strike Double Blast bundle that included a gun you could attach to your Wiimote. As for NERF Legends though, it almost feels a bit refreshing in that yes, it is a first-person shooter at its core, but you aren't getting blood splattering everywhere or blowing off heads. Instead, you're beating down NERF robots with foam darts. The story here involves you playing as a character that you'll create and taking part in the NERF trials. You'll be battling through various different areas, mowing down robots, shooting switches, and bouncing and sliding towards 4 different NERF masters in order to become the ultimate NERF champion. Some of the story is told through CG cutscenes that oddly look worse than the in-game graphics, so those end up feeling pretty much unnecessary. NERF Legends does feature that full single-player campaign, and I hope you're into it because the multiplayer is completely dead right now. I tried to join games multiple times, but it would appear absolutely nobody at all is playing, or it's just not working, one or the other. This might be a hard pill for some of you to swallow because if essentially all you have is the single-player component, and the multiplayer is in fact dead on arrival, this is going to be a game that is far more difficult to recommend. That's a shame because the campaign in NERF Legends shows quite a bit of promise. Mechanically, the gameplay's pretty decent, a lot like many other first-person shooters really. You can sprint, jump, double jump, aim down the sights, melee attack, and even put up a shield to block bullets. This is especially handy against turret guns. There are some bouncy trampolines that spring you about, tricky switches that often need to be shot in order to progress forward, and you even have the ability to slide underneath doors or down bridges, which can be quite thrilling. Objectives are pretty easy to follow, mainly involving you taking down waves of enemies, but I felt like a lot of creativity and heart went into using the NERF property here in terms of how these worlds are built. I can't even fathom in my mind what a NERF video game would be outside of an on-rail shooter, so I was super impressed that the developer was able to create entire worlds that do give off the feel and vibe of what the NERF universe is all about. The game is also not overly punishing, as you do have a multiplier, and should you be defeated, the biggest hit you'll take is losing some of your score. Your score upon completing a level determines what type of medal you'll receive, and ultimately there are a few new guns and weapons to be unlocked, 15 guns in total, though one could argue maybe you could have had a few more. Each level will take you roughly 20 to 30 minutes to complete, but I did find that while fun in short bursts, this is a game that can wear on you in a larger marathon session, as a lot of games can, to be fair. It does feel a bit repetitive after a while, going through the same tasks that feel similar to the last, and I would say your best option when playing through this campaign would be to do maybe a level or two a day or at a time or something like that, and not try to do it all in one sitting. Also, the final showdown with the NERF Master at the end of each world can be pretty obnoxious, so do be prepared for that. It's a decent difficulty spike. All told, you do have a decent-sized campaign with those 15 NERF blasters to collect, but once it's over, outside of trying to do better on these levels, you're kinda screwed if the multiplayer doesn't find some sort of life, because you're essentially playing half of the game. That's a shame, because I do feel like some fun could have been had with the free-for-all or team-based battles, because the core game design is pretty enjoyable. I could envision fierce battles bouncing on trampolines, strategically shooting, but sadly, that's all I could do. Imagine them, so kind of like playing with a NERF gun, you gotta use your own imagination here. As I touched on a bit earlier, graphically, the game looks pretty nice with some imagination and thought that went into each world. It wasn't perfect though, as I was having some pretty significant frame rate drops at times, and even one hard lockup that cost me a good amount of progress. The frame rate would bounce anywhere from 100 frames per second to 47, regardless of what I had the settings at or the resolution. There's not that many settings anyways, and there's no VSync option either, so I couldn't do much about about stabilizing the frame rate unless I wanted to try and tool around with the NVIDIA settings, which I did not. Not much to write home about here in terms of sound design. I would say actually that some of the songs get a little bit irritating, if I'm being honest with you. There are these guitar riffs that will pop up from time to time, almost ad nauseum. I wanted to kill the sound entirely because I got sick of hearing the same old riff time and time again. None of the blasters, the sounds they made stood out to me or anything like that. So nothing really compelling about the sound design of the game, despite the fact that I did like the look of the game. So then, unfortunately, NERF Legends fails to reach legendary status due to some poor performance and a dead multiplayer mode, but I don't want to fully give up on this game because there was something to it. It's imaginative and it plays pretty good when it is running well, which to be fair is the majority of the time, but the lack of online presence is pretty brutal, and I can only hope some sort of audience finds this game so that it isn't dead on arrival. Ultimately, you have a fun though repetitive campaign here in a neat NERF universe, but it just isn't quite enough. Hey, but nobody's nerfed. Thank you so much for watching the latest video from I Dream of Indie. We would now like to take a moment to pay tribute to our great indie warriors who support us through channel membership. Bill T, Christian Cruz, Kevilo, Mitchell Hall, Chris Jackson, Nathan Moore, Adriana Amato, CJR, C Coil, Skeptism, Haley, Julian Colbus, Jen Rose, Jesse, CPM Bunny, JRS the 8th, Raylin, and Marky Mint. Thank you so much for all you do for independent developers, publishers, and for I Dream of Indie. Everybody else, please head down to the description box below. It's time to stop the echo chamber and bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming.